There it is. Oh, we're recording. So just a little bit about our speaker today. Representative Kevin D. Miller serves the people of the House District 72. State Representative Kevin Miller was appointed in June of 2020 to represent the people of the 72nd House Ohio District, which encompasses all of the Coshocton and Perry counties and part of Licking County. Representative Miller has been with the Ohio State Highway Patrol for over 20 years, with the pleasure of serving the residents of the 72nd District in Granville from 2014 to 2017. Throughout his law enforcement career, he has served as a state trooper, labor relations management advocate, and post commander. Additionally, Representative Miller has legislative experience as the legislative liaison for the patrol's governmental affairs over the past 4 years, which include tracking and testifying on legislation of the State House. The representative received his bachelor's degree at Ohio State University and later attended a 12-week advanced leadership course for law enforcement executives at the FBI National Academy. Representative Miller has been a lifelong Republican pushing for policies that drive economic growth and job creation. He also values conservative principles such as the right to life, right to bear arms, and freedom from governmental overreach. Representative Miller has been married to his high school sweetheart, Megan, for 21 years, and they have 2 children attending colleges in the Buckeye State. They attend St. Francis de Sales Catholic Church and reside in Newark, Ohio. So if you could unmute yourself, Representative Miller, and let us know what we need to hear.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Well, first of all, as you heard, my background is in law enforcement, and I had the opportunity to serve for the last 4 years of my career as the legislative liaison. So that's kind of how I got into, the State House side of things, but never really was very political. So the opening came up, the former speaker, that's where we live in that district. And after discussions with my wife, I said, well, what do you think? And she said, why not? So I interviewed, and son of a gun, they picked me. That's how it kind of happened here. So I'm going to apologize in advance. I'm not your polished politician. Was a state trooper for 22 years. So I'm not one of those folks that have been doing this or been in politics for a while. I appreciate the opportunity to work with you guys. And one of the things folks always ask is, hey, what are you going to be a champion for? What are your priorities? And as you might imagine, law enforcement is going to be a significant portion of, my time. I'm going to be an advocate for law enforcement down at the State House. But I always tell folks that, this isn't the Kevin Miller show. This is the House District 72 show, which means that I'm going to advocate for the issues that are important to those in my district. And ironically enough, I can fill you in on an issue that was brought to me from an individual in my district, auctioneer Greg Rice. And it deals with the transfer of titles. And specifically, he brought to me the transfer of titles out of an auction and the delays that it takes after selling that and pushing it through probate. And he said, hey, Kevin, is there anything that you can do to help us out to try to speed this along and maybe get these out of probate? So I said, well, the first thing I don't do is make any promises. I said, but let me look into it and see what I can do. So what I did was I went ahead and had some language drafted, and we sent that out, and I believe you folks have had the opportunity to take a look at it. I sent it off to the Ohio Judicial Conference as well. And there was request for a couple tweaks, but the long and short of it is I've got language that is going to exempt the transfer of a title for a watercraft trailer, an outboard motor, as well as vehicles, automobiles, without going through probate. So what my goal is to do is to find a vehicle in lame duck here and see if we can get this pushed through to try to save you folks some time, and get these titles transferred in a more expeditious manner without having to wait for probate. Now, if I can't do this in lame duck in some sort of vehicle, what my plan would be is probably to get this into the transportation budget, probably this coming spring. So that's kind of what I really wanted to inform you folks about. And I have my aide Daniel is online as well, and he's been integral in this process. And I would be more than happy to answer any questions or concerns that someone might have regarding the legislation.
Thank you, Representative Miller. And it looks like Rachel's unmuting herself, but if you guys can, thank you, Rachel, for being with us. I didn't see you earlier, but thank you for your time. And we, Representative Miller, we don't want to take and abuse it, but I'm sure there's going to be some questions regarding what is going to be entailed and involved. And I think a lot of us probably have been through the pain of title transfer. It's a lot of fun. So Rachel, you start us off, but after we've asked the question, just have a little etiquette that we remute ourselves and allow him to answer the question. And then, as I see, and if I can help coordinate a little bit, I will, but just unmute, ask your question, and then feel free to mute yourself back so he can answer.
Yeah, thanks so much. So Representative Miller, first of all, thank you so much for proactively reaching out to the Ohio Auctioneers Association and sharing this language with us. I'm the registered lobbyist for the Ohio Auctioneers Association, so I'm down here in Columbus. I'll be the one at the State House. I am available to you to help in any way. If you need legislators that are on the committee that need to, touch base on the issue, or, I'll work this issue as hard as we need it to be worked to get it done, whether it's lame duck or, transportation budget or operations budget or wherever we can find a home for it, which we will. And obviously you've got legislative experience, which is great. That is great coming from a new legislator that knows sort of how it works. But my question was, do you have your eye on any particular piece of legislation, lame duck, yet, or is it early?
You know what? It's a little early for that. Unless Daniel, if you're on there and you can jump on, I don't know if you've had any discussions downtown. I don't know any off the top of my head. I don't know if he can jump on. Here, microphone. He can't do it.
Well, and I can help with that too. I can look and see and talk to chairs and find out which bills are moving and, help socialize the idea as well. Lame duck, I'm worried is for the first time in my life, I'm worried it's going to be too short. I think there's only like 3 dates, so I think it's going to be a harder lame duck than in years past if they stick to that schedule, if you all stick to that schedule. But we'll certainly, have you found any opposition yet from anybody?
No, I have not. And as long as the judges are on board, which is what I thought, if there's anybody that's gonna, be up in arms, it might be the judges or the bar. And neither one of them, to my knowledge, had given us anything significant. I know Daniel had touched base with me a couple times, or I think a couple tweaks to the language. But no opposition. And as you know, that's really good, especially if you're just looking to do something like this as an amendment, because that's the first thing the chairs ask is, who did you check with? What did they say? Is there any opposition? And something that's as simple, in my opinion, as simple as this with no opposition. These are the types of things that I think we can slide in as an amendments, and it's really not a big issue, at least in my opinion. And you're probably,
I know, well, we never try to guess what's going to happen, but we'll get it done for sure. Okay, well, just, Daniel and I have been communicating pretty regularly. So, he and I will, although he may be gone, he may be trying to, anyways, I'll stay in touch with your office to make sure that we can do whatever we can to be helpful to you.
Excellent. Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
I'm not sure if I see anybody else. Daniel's trying to get on. I don't see if anybody else is trying to unmute or not. For the sake of the conversation, Greg, I see you're on here. Talk to you a lot anyways, but Greg, can you give some context to reaching out to Representative Miller and the scenario, just in case not every auctioneer on here understands it? And I don't know if he he's not unmuting yet or not. I see him there, but he's not unmuting. But my understanding, and at least this is my experience when I deal with car titles, is you've sold it and you're settling, and I think this is, and hopefully Greg's listening, but you're settling the estate. And so now you've sold it to the buyer, and you have to then wait for the judge to sign off on the title to be transferred to that new buyer. And so you've collected the money. In some cases, the buyer has the vehicle, and now you're waiting 30+ days to get the title back to the buyer to complete the sale. And I see you're shaking your head, Representative Miller, so maybe you can speak to that too, but just to give some context to what the issue was that we're trying to solve.
Yeah, I can, and you pretty much nailed it. There's a significant delay. It went to a public auction, so folks were there. They were able to bid on it. Went to the highest bidder. The auctions were published and all those types of things. So really, it's just a rubber stamp, but it's a huge delay in time. So it creates that inefficiency. And according to Greg, he has never had one or even heard of one ever been denied. So for me, it's like red tape, right? Let's get rid of this. It's going to an auction, sold to the highest bidder. Let's do what we can to get this more efficient, and that's why it made perfect sense to me to introduce this and try to get this rolling through the process. So,
another question that I would have: would this be for an estate where there's an executor, or is it for an estate where there's an administrator? Or is there something that's going to be different for each one of those cases? Because, an executor has all of the authority to do what they want. The administrator has to have the court's approval. So are we what does that look like? And maybe you can speak to that.
Actually I can. I'll have to follow up on that to see if there's any difference in the two. I'm certainly not an expert in this area. And through our discussions, I wasn't aware of any difference, in the two types of estates, whether it was an executor or an administrator, and how that might impact this. But I can certainly follow up with this and get back with Rachel and get you guys that information for sure.
Okay. Anybody else have questions? Definitely don't want to keep your time. I know you're all busy.
I knew that you guys were working on an amendment that was suggested by a few of our members to include all titled vehicles. Do you know, I should know this, but I don't even know if I've seen that version yet.
Rachel, if you guys can hear me now, sorry, I was having technical issues. I requested that from LSC about a week and a half ago. We should have it relatively soon. And as soon as I have that, I'll be sure to share it right with you guys.
So as soon as we get that back, Brian, we'll make sure you get a copy of that so you can look at it carefully and see if it's maybe needs to be put in a different section as well. Like maybe it's just in an administrative section and not an executive section. And you know what I mean? Like, let's make sure we get it right. But we're still waiting for the final version, thanks to their willingness to help us with our amendment and make sure that it applies to all titled vehicles and not just motor vehicles.
And I guess the easiest way to explain the difference is when you're dealing with an estate, an executor is in the will, named in the will. And if you're dealing with an estate that an executor is not named in the will, then a court-appointed administrator then deals with going through the process of settling the estate, and the appointed administrator cannot make the same decisions that the executor can make. And a lot of the things have to be the judge approved, the court approved in that process with the administrator versus the executor. You don't have as much. So that's all is there going to be a difference in the two? I love to hear that boats and boat motors and all that stuff's going to be included. But anyways, I think it's a great thing that if it could pass and, you don't have to have that last seal. I think that's a great thing. So I would love to see where this goes.
Hey, Brian, one last question on there you kind of prompted. So as you just explained the administrator versus the executor, and the administrator always goes through the judge. The executor does not, they make the decision. So I guess my question was, if the executor doesn't go through a judge, then there shouldn't be a delay and this wouldn't apply. Correct? Or am I looking at this wrong?
So then going through the process with the executor, probate has been opened to sell a titled vehicle. So you'll see in some cases where grandma or grandpa has passed away and whoever maybe the executor may be named, may not open the probate to deal with the car because it costs more money to open the probate case to deal with the title vehicle. So
Gotcha.
no matter if you're an executor or an administrator, you still have to open a probate case to deal with the title vehicle. And so I don't know what that would look like if you didn't have the judge's rubber stamp of approval. I have no idea.
Okay.
But
All right.
you still have to open the probate case to deal with the title vehicle, whether you're an executor or an administrator.
Gotcha. All righty, we'll check into that. Anybody else?
Well, I don't see anybody else unmuting their mic, so, I think at this point, we have the information to get a hold of Mr. Slayball. If we have other questions, is that the best way to route questions, Representative Miller?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yep.
So if we get questions that come in, and anybody that's on the call, if you have questions that you think of them, send them to me, Brian@auctionohio.com. You can send them to other board members. You can send them to the president. Happy to take the questions and then field them and get answers for you. Looks like Greg's unmuting. Greg, go ahead, caller. Maybe. Greg Rice? Chris Davis has something. Maybe.
Yeah, no, Brian, I just wanted to interject. So whether it's to my understanding, whether it's an executor or an administrator, there's an entry that's required through probate to be accompanied by letters of authority. Is that what you're talking about? The difference between, but they both would still require an entry
Right.
with that particular automobile and who bought it and what the price was to accompany the title along with the letters of authority, right? Is that?
Well, and I think Greg, and he unmuted himself there for a second, but I think is what he was talking about and what they're trying to push through is that you no longer need the entry to accompany it. But yes, what I was talking about and just working, in the industry and learning from you, but being an executive or being an administrator, you still have to have probate court open and you still have to have an entry accompanied with it, to your point.
You do. Yep, you do. Okay. Thank you.
Greg, you went away. Did you have something to say? Question? I don't even see you on here anymore, Greg. Greg's having technical difficulties. We'll see if he comes back, but Representative Miller, thank you for your time. Absolutely, if anybody has questions, happy to get those to Mr. Slayball to help answer those questions. Thank you all for being with us. We look to do this again either, and I don't know that it'll happen again in September, but have another topic maybe in October. But we'll get more information, have some special guests that help answer some questions surrounding current topics. Would love to see each and one of you, all of you at the marketing summit coming up in September. And I don't think that I have anything else other than have a great day, work hard, sell something. And Kathy, I think you're okay to probably go ahead and close the Zoom. And that was a record 20 minutes long. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Brian. Take care, folks.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
Brian.
See you in September.